what does it really mean to be targeted? It's a feeling that can start as this tiny whisper of suspicion, a weird coincidence, maybe a strange look from a stranger. But then it can grow and grow until it's this terrifying, life-altering certainty. So let's dive into this, because it's a really complex and honestly frightening part of the human experience. Yeah, that feeling is just perfectly captured in this desperate post from an internet user, PatCat56, who is just convinced that hackers have systematically ruined their life. This whole explainer, we're going to walk along that razor-thin line between a documented, verifiable threat and a perceived one. And we're going to see what happens when those two worlds start to look eerily similar. Okay, so to really get what it means to be targeted, we first need to ground ourselves in reality. Let's look at a verifiable, real-world example from the Philippines. This is a place where being targeted by the state isn't a feeling. It's a documented and dangerous fact of life for a lot of people. And make no mistake, this is not just political name-calling. In the Philippines, red tagging is a systematic tactic. It's used to intimidate and silence anyone who speaks out. The second you get that label, you become a legitimate target for harassment, for surveillance, and even for violence. The numbers, well, they're just staggering. Between 2016 and 2020, human rights groups documented hundreds of killings, thousands of illegal arrests. This is not random violence, right? It's a clear pattern. The data shows a systematic campaign of harassment, a state-level operation aimed at very specific groups of people. So who are these targets? Well, they're often the people on the front lines, the ones speaking out against powerful interests in mining, logging, and government. They're the leaders of indigenous communities, environmental defenders, journalists, basically anyone who poses a challenge to the status quo. For victims like Stephen Tolley, a guy who was abducted and interrogated by suspected state agents, being targeted means your entire life just shrinks. You have to live in this constant state of fear and suspicion. And that's the goal, to make you feel isolated, powerless, and absolutely terrified into silence. Okay, so now let's shift gears. We're going from that documented reality to a subjective one. A world that, surprisingly, uses almost the exact same language to describe a very different kind of threat. Welcome to the world of the self-described targeted individual. It's a growing online community of people who believe they are the victims of a vast invisible conspiracy. These Ts, as they call themselves, have built whole communities on platforms like YouTube and Reddit to share what's happening to them. They talk about being followed by so-called gang stalkers in public and being hit with electronic harassment through invisible energy weapons, all of it, they believe, orchestrated by some shadowy, powerful force. So you might be asking, where do these ideas even come from? Well, the Tim narrative is this really potent mix of fact and speculation. They'll point to real, declassified government programs, like the CIA's infamous mind control experiments in MKUltra as proof that the technology exists and that governments are willing to use it on their own citizens. And this belief, it's incredibly pervasive inside the community. According to one academic study, a whopping 94% reported being physically surveilled or followed. Just think about that for a second. For nearly every single person in this community, the feeling of being watched isn't just a suspicion, it's their constant daily reality. And here it is, this is the crucial point where these two very different worlds connect. The stated purpose of this perceived harassment is identical to the documented goal of political red tagging. It doesn't matter if the threat is a soldier at your door or an invisible microwave beam, the intended psychological outcome is exactly the same, to make you feel alone, crazy, and utterly broken. So how in the world do we bridge these two realities, the documented political target and the perceived technological one? Well, the connection isn't about the weapons or who's behind it. It's in the playbook they both seem to follow, the playbook of psychological warfare. Psychological warfare, or PSYOPs, isn't about blowing things up. It's warfare aimed directly at the mind. The whole point is to erode an enemy's will to fight by attacking their sense of reality, their trust in their leaders, and even their faith in themselves. In modern military strategy, this has kind of evolved into what's being called cognitive warfare. As Chinese military analysts have put it, the goal is to directly attack the enemy's mind. You want to make your target doubt their own sanity, their own safety, and their trust in literally everyone around them. Just look at the official aims of these operations. Weaken their sense of security, disturb their daily life, discredit the target, induce fear and paranoia, isolate them from support systems. I mean, this isn't just a description of military tactics. It is a perfect description of the experiences reported by both the red-tagged activists in the Philippines and the targeted individuals online.
The parallels are they're undeniable. Yeah, the methods are different, public smearing versus private torment, a physical soldier versus perceived gang stalking, but the intended psychological outcome is exactly the same. And this reveals something so crucial. Your mind doesn't always distinguish the source of an attack, only the feeling of being under siege.
So, all of this leads us to a final and honestly a deeply unsettling question. What happens when technology advances to the point where the mind itself becomes the next frontier for surveillance and control?
We're no longer talking about listening to your phone calls or reading your emails. No. Researchers and ethicists are in a very serious debate right now about the need for a whole new category of human rights, rights specifically designed to protect our innermost thoughts from technology.
The proposed solution is a framework of what are being called neuro-rights. And look, these aren't science fiction concepts. They are a direct response to the incredibly rapid development of neurotechnology that can read and maybe even influence our brain activity. This is about protecting the very essence of who we are.
And the threat is real enough to have a name. Researchers have coined the term brainjacking to describe, well, hacking a human mind. With the rise of brain-computer interfaces and other implants, what was once just the stuff of conspiracy theories is now becoming a tangible cybersecurity risk. So, just imagine for a second, a future where the tools of psychological warfare are no longer propaganda and surveillance cameras, but direct access to our neural data. In that world, how could you possibly tell the difference between state oppression, corporate manipulation, or your own paranoia? And that's the critical question we're left with. As technology continues to merge with our own biology, the subjective feeling of being targeted and the objective reality of being surveilled could become one and the same. How will any of us really know for sure if it's all in our head?